The planets have aligned, and once again, the prophecy has come true. That's right, folks. It's time for another episode of the Roundtable Rethink podcast with me, your host, Uncle Paddy, joined every week by twin brother and spare partsman, Andy, the asshole. Woo! And back from his adventures in London, Bestie, the sage, Stevie Telavive.
Good evening. Great to see you guys.
Good to have you back, mate. This week we will be discussing Chairman Starmer and his request for Apple to create a backdoor to iCloud data. We'll also be reacting to Grok3. Is it any good? What does it do? And what are the things specifically it excels at? We'll also be discussing how to apply the entrepreneurial method and AI to the job-seeking process. And finally, a palate cleanser of when good AI goes bad. Plus any goddamn thing we please. So There you go, folks. Another action-packed week of news.
Yep.
Before we get into the docket, guys, how's the week been? All good?
My week has been busy, boring, and workmanlike. So let's get off that straight away. And more importantly, how was Stephen's week in the big smoke, living high on the hog?
And will he disclose that he went to an ABBA show?
I was going to. So a few things. It was great to be away. I thoroughly enjoyed being down in London. It was a reminder of we are a nation of two halves. London is just so vibrant. The traffic infrastructure, incredible. Not that it's problems, but it was great being down there. So easy to get around the city. We loved it. ABBA Voyage was phenomenal. I actually could have believed they were all there. Yeah. The only bit that made me cry was when they played the 1974 Eurovision Song Contest. They put the video up on the big screen, and I thought, shit, I remember that like it was yesterday. So absolutely fabulous time. Off to, I think it was Ashton House after that for a conference with some fabulous people that I know. And old King Henry VIII Palace. And again, just beautiful place. So real great few days with the lovely Tracy. And but most of all, I really enjoyed listening to you guys last week. It was fabulous to actually listen to the pod as a listener rather than as a participant. So well done.
Well, I mean, it was brilliant for Brian taking a step in and kind of shore up the episode last week. And thank you again, Brian, for that. But it's absolutely wonderful to have you back, pal.
It ain't the same without Stevie Telavive, that's for sure.
But the question is, how many colours of pink polka dot bikini did you shop for when you were in London?
There is only one.
Thank God he made it back without getting stabbed or his belongings stolen by a dangerous moped gang. I will return to that theme in just a moment. Okay, let's get into the docket. So we're going to kick off with Grok3. We kind of talked last week about what we thought we could expect from Grok3. I think all the predictions came true. Yep. It's out. It's acing every benchmark. It's obviously a state-of-the-art frontier model. We have a couple of really interesting differentiated capabilities. So one of the things I've noticed as I've used it extensively in the last 2 or 3 days has been the think capability and then the deep search capability. Yep. I am one of the headbangers who's now signed up for his 9th AI tool. Literally hundreds of fucking pounds a month now on AI subscriptions.
Paddy's got 300 quid a month's worth of monthly subscriptions to tools that all do the same thing.
Just getting wild. I'm going to have to cancel a few
with
things.
With subtle differences between them.
So signed up for Super Grok at 30 quid a month. And my observations so far are that Grok is like your crazy drunk uncle at the Christmas dining room table who's got 3 PhDs who can explain quantum mechanics in detail, but will most likely do it while dancing on the table with a lampshade on his head.
So what you're saying is he's incredibly based.
Grok will literally do and say anything. There's examples of where it will literally tell people how to build a nuclear bomb, and
I love it already.
Where it is extremely based and where it will do literally anything is on the image generation side of things. Now, there's a couple of things here. So I have been playing with that extensively. So here's what I noticed, right? What I noticed is, unlike the other diffusion models that make images, that mostly produce cartoon stylized images. Grok actually produces what looks like photoshopped images. So it will actually take an artist, in this case Taylor Swift, and it will do a photoshopped version of Taylor Swift. So one of the prompts I asked it to do, and we will link this in the show notes for anybody who's interested in seeing it, because we can share that. I asked it to make an image of Taylor Swift, but she is morbidly obese and smoking cigarettes. And it did an absolutely stunning job of an obese Taylor Swift smoking cigarettes.
Photorealistic.
Now, here's the crazy thing. ChatGPT and Gemini both refused to create the image. I then followed up with what I thought would definitely trip it up, as I asked it for Superman, but make him pregnant and exposing his pregnant belly. Both ChatGPT and Gemini refused to make that, and Grok was like, not a bother.
Here you go.
I'm just going to ask the question. I want to come on to this with my piece later on. Does Grok understand what copyright means?
I don't think so, and I'm not sure. I mean, at the end of the day, I think all the main frontier models are effectively stolen products. I mean, they're products fueled by stolen data, and that's a big debate going on in the trademark-rich industries like publishing. I know the New York Times and the Washington Post have a big... JCal even has a big bug to bear on that. So I think they're all in the same boat, but Grok definitely doesn't have the guardrails built in at this point. And it's so Elon, it's like a beta version of a product that if they just hung on to it for another 3 or 4 weeks, they could have really polished and professionalized the output.
Well, that's one of the things that I was going to talk to. So I called you from a hyperbaric chamber in Paisley looking like fucking Bane from Batman. And I was playing with Grok3 at the time, and what's clear is that the V1 version that they launched on that day, on the launch day, you can tell they could have done me an extra day or two just to kind of dial it in. You know, they did rush it out the door early, and I was finding it quite buggy. And then some of the code tests that some of the testers had ran on it. Do you know the one with the ball inside the hexagon that a lot of the models do?
Yeah.
And the hexagon spinning and the ball's got to stay within the hexagon. It wasn't even appearing in the hexagon. So it was indicative that they'd kind of rushed it out the door early, but in typical Elon fashion, as the days have ticked forward, it's got exponentially better.
Sorry, Steve.
I'm going to ask one question. Humanity's last exam, which I'm fascinated by, how does it rank against that?
They have yet to publish any benchmarks against Humanity's last exam. They have published a few other benchmarks, though, and there is some evidence at this point of Grok doing stuff that is effectively superhuman. So there is a math test, and I'm just trying to find it here in my notes. So there's a math test that they ran Grok against. It's computational math. 500 of the best math people in the world entered this competition, and none of them were able to solve the math equation. So 500 of the best math people in the world went to the competition, were unable to solve it. They gave Grok3 the same math equation or the same math problem using deep reasoning and its think problem. It was able to solve it in 8 minutes.
Right.
Wow.
So that's the first glimpses of Grok starting to demonstrate
Superhuman intelligence, capabilities.
behavior. Yeah. So that was quite exciting to see. It does excel at the STEM-related stuff, so math, science, coding, by the way, they almost like fixed the coding thing overnight. On the day it was launched, there was a ton of bad examples of where it was a shit co-pilot for coding. Yeah. And then ever since then, I've seen nothing but almost pure magic. Yeah. And they're so confident in its ability to do coding and specifically to make games that they're actually starting a game studio. They're starting an XAI game studio to make computer games using purely AI. The most magical programming example that I saw in the last 24 hours was, imagine like strings on a harp, just like hundreds of them floating in space. And then somebody being able to go along,
run your finger
strings,
across them,
and then the physics of the strings all interacting with each other, and then the notes that they were producing was absolutely stunning. And it was all built using prompts. It was actually beautiful as well. So people are starting to share some incredible examples. One thing they are absolutely committed to is daily improvements.
Yeah.
So I think the crazy thing that people don't realize about Grok is
It's as bad as it'll ever be
it's
right
as bad
now.
today as it will ever be. There's no new training run required to dial in multi-100% improvements from where it is right now. It's just all about fine-tuning, weights, reinforcement learning, all the stuff that happens post-training.
And the code example's encouraging because my experience with trying to create JSON in other models, whether it's O1 or even O3 Mini and stuff like that, I've never been able to dial the prompt in tight enough where you don't get errors in the JSON. And the fact that it does appear that Grok is actually developing like perfect JSON that you can then, like scripts that you can basically load into a site and run, is very, very encouraging.
Just run back JSON for people that don't understand.
JavaScript.
Like me.
Yeah.
JavaScript.
JSON is just formatted output for code.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. So anyway, Grok, very impressive. Everything we thought it was going to be. Here's where I think is the real story with Grok. And Chamath said it best on the All In podcast. He said, sometimes innovation requires a constraint. And sometimes that constraint is capital, money. Sometimes that constraint is talent. And sometimes it's time. And it's pretty clear that Elon used time as a constraint to build out this model. So the really crazy thing about XAI and Grok shooting to the very top of the leaderboard and by any measure being state-of-the-art in terms of frontier models is incredible when you think that the company never existed 12 months ago.
Yeah.
ChatGPT was founded in 2015 and Google founded DeepMind in 2008. And in the space of a year, he's been able to bypass everybody and go to the very top of the leaderboard.
And said something the other day, like, I think it was on the day it launched, it went, today will be the last day that any AI is smarter than Grok in the future.
Yeah.
So I think that he thinks that they're just going to gallop it into the lead now, into the distance.
And that's also to do with the processing power and the way he's been able to hook all that up together. So he's basically going to have 200,000, you're saying what's 100,000 nodes this
Actually,
time?
200,000 now. So one of the things, one of the things that came out of the explainer of how Grok works is they explained that they sat the team down and went, reach out to every data center builder in the world and tell them we need an AI data center with 100,000 GPUs. How long will it take? And everybody come back and said 24 to 36 months. And he went, right, okay, well, based on everybody else's rate of improvement, we'll be dead. Like, success isn't going to be one of the possible outcomes if we have to wait 3 months to have 3 years to have a facility that we can trade data on. The race is going to be over by then. So he scrapped that idea and he found an old Electrolux factory in Memphis. And he used that factory because it already had some of the foundational things that he needed. It had access to power, it had access to different things. So he transformed the Electrolux factory, moved in the hardware, something that would normally take a typical data center builder 18 months to 2 years to do, and had the factory operational with the hardware and 100,000 H100s coherent within 122 days. He then had the next problem. It turns out that 100,000 GPUs create a hell of a lot of heat.
Yeah.
And he had no solution to it. So do you know what he did? He leased 25% of the entire US's mobile cooling capacity.
I saw that today. Yeah. Which is fucking mental.
So he just he moves at a speed and he solves problems at a speed, and there's no committees and there's no he's just a one-man wrecking ball, and his ability to just knock down these problems and just blast through these constraints is like nothing else on earth.
Yeah.
And so I don't see how companies like Google and others can keep up with the pace of iteration and improvement that Grok will bring to this, because he is riding his team into the ground every day. Oh, and by the way, you know the second bank of 100,000 GPUs, he wired them up in 90 days. So he brought the time down from 122 to 90 to wire up the second bank of 100,000.
But I think it's important to acknowledge that it's not just about processing power here.
Yeah.
He was inferring that there was stuff that was proprietary about the reasoning method, the actual thinking method itself, to the point where they actually obscured it.
They did.
So that competitors couldn't see what was going on there.
They feel like they've got an advantage there. So in the way that you see DeepSeek thinking, and it tells you what it's thinking and it shows you the steps it's gone through, they still have a nice graphic for that. They still have nice visuals for how that operates. But they're obscuring a lot of the things that actually make it special. They really feel like they've landed on an advantage.
So they're not just innovating on the hardware side, they're innovating on the actual architecture of the LLM itself.
So what you're really saying to us all is there is no end of potential for what you can do with Taylor Swift graphics in the forthcoming future.
Next week we'll do something X-rated with Fat Taylor Swift smoking cigarettes.
So pretty incredible stuff. Like Andy said, I think today is the day. Grok will never be dumber than it is right now. But listen, the competition rolls on. If you believe the rumor mill, by the time we sit down next week, it's pretty likely that ChatGPT will launch ChatGPT 4.5 and Anthropic will launch the next version of Claude by the time we sit down here next Monday night. And so the leapfrogging will continue. The battle for supremacy will continue. And it benefits everybody. But again, we're just seeing things move at an incredible pace. And I think, by the way, if you go back to episode 1, Andy the Asshole's prediction that Grok might be the leading LLM by the end of 25, I think is looking pretty nailed on. Okay, so that's everything we had on Grok. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was a story that blew up over the weekend, which was the UK government's desire for Apple to create a backdoor into the iCloud system. Now, I will disclose up front that I have a massive raging fucking problem with this and think it's appalling, and I will expand on why I think that. But before I get into an ultra mega rant, what I think I'll do
Turn your volume down, listeners.
is I will lay out the facts, because there's so much misinformation online about what's actually happened here. I'll try and explain as best I can the facts, and to make sure I get them right, I've actually written them down here. So if it sounds like I'm reading something for the next couple of minutes, it's because I am. So what was true before Apple pulled their advanced data protection over the weekend? So the conditions that were true was Apple offered advanced data protection, ADP, and I'll refer to that as we go through the story here, which is an optional feature that provides end-to-end encryption for iCloud data. And that would include things like your backups, your photos, your notes, and your reminders. Now, with ADP enabled, only you held the encryption keys for your data, okay? So think about end-to-end encryption, which is what advanced data protection is Apple handing you the keys for your data and saying, right, Paddy, you're now responsible for this. And if you lose the keys, you're screwed. We cannot help you. We don't have access to your content to recover it. You're taking responsibility for the management of the security keys for your data.
But it also means that ipso facto, if the government come and ask Apple for your data, they say, sorry guys, we'd love to help you, but he's got the keys.
Exactly. So Apple could still hand over your data, but it would be worthless because you're the only person with the encryption keys. So this ensured maximum privacy, as even legal requests for data could not be fulfilled by Apple due to the technical impossibility of decrypting the data. So what is the current state? Well, the current state today is that the UK government, under the Investigatory Powers Act, another fucking
Chancellor
dreadful sounding thing. It's like, you have done well, Lord Vader. So the UK government, under the Investigatory Powers Act, demanded access to encrypted iCloud data for national security purposes. Apple refused to create a traditional backdoor. So as an alternative to being compelled to build a backdoor, they actually yanked the feature. So they said, right, we're not going to build a backdoor into advanced data protection. And if you compel us to do it, we'll yank the feature itself as the best of a bunch of bad options. And so that's what they did. So as of February 21st, ADP became disabled. I first saw it on X, went to my phone, couldn't actually believe as a user of ADP, I was being told that no new users would be able to sign up for advanced data protection. And if you were a current advanced data protection, then Apple would be in touch imminently to tell you how that would be disabled and how you would go back to a standard level of encryption. Now, what I want to stress here is Apple are not the bad guys. I've saw so much, Apple capitulating to the government. Apple don't have a choice, right? Apple have to comply with the laws and the jurisdictions that they sell
tens
product
of millions of users in the
into.
UK.
So Apple kind of go, well, fuck you guys, we're just keeping it and we don't care. Like, they've got to comply. So Apple's actually be the standard bearer for all this stuff up until this point. They've been the gold standard for privacy and security. They've been known for that. And advanced data protection is an optional feature that they provided that no other cloud provider like Google provides. So everybody who's got a Google phone, it's not like you can move to Android and avoid this. You'd be subject to the same risks as standard encryption provides. So that's a bit of the background to the whole thing. So what's the implications? Well, the implication is it sets a dangerous precedent as other governments might demand similar access, and that could weaken global privacy standards for everybody. It does highlight the tension between government surveillance, always justified by security needs and individual privacy and civil liberties. And as we know for the Edward Snowden revelations, governments always prioritize surveillance over privacy.
And they always abuse their access to data.
I'm holding myself back.
Yeah.
I'm listening, and then I'm going to rant.
Bum cheeks
Okay.
are pursing in the chair over there.
So I will make the case for why I think this is absolutely terrible, and why even if they did it, it would be completely and totally ineffective. And then I'll show you the receipts I've got for why I hold that position.
So who do you think should go first here? Stephen's obviously got the other end of this argument. So do you think Stephen should go first?
I'm happy for Stephen to
No,
go first.
I'll let you
dig your own grave.
unleash your rant.
Okay. So I always think everybody should have a healthy degree of skepticism when the government is telling you they need things off you for your security and your protection, and they need to make you safe. I often think that, well, I always think that's horseshit, right? I don't think the government's sitting worried about your best interest. I know the arguments for this. Oh, we need it. We need it for terrorists, and we need it to track down terrorists and pedophiles. And if you actually follow Ben Wallace, super fucking weasel Ben Wallace, who's the former Home Secretary on Twitter, he was literally gloating, going, ha, 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 everybody getting all wound up about this. It's ridiculous. The telecoms companies have been sending us all your information for years. You know, we know everywhere you go, if your phone gets compromised, all your complaints are made invalid. I mean, he was literally goading the public. Anybody who had a legitimate concern about this, he was literally
Goading
almost
them.
trying to humiliate them online. It was just sickening to me. So we don't have to guess if this can actually work, because there's already been precedent set in other countries. So if you took Australia as an example, so Australia had, let me just find it here. They had the Backdoor Act that they enacted in 2018, which gave them similar capabilities to what the UK government have asked for. 7 years later, there's no fucking evidence at all that fundamentally led to any increase in prosecutions for pedophiles, for terrorists, or any other branch of the criminal underworld. None whatsoever, 7 years later. Now, faced with that evidence, did the government of Australia, who sought that power, go, guys, we've ran the experiment, and you know what? It turns out all this power was fucking useless.
Let's hand it
So we're
back.
actually going to hand it back to you. No, they haven't. So there's no evidence that power worked. There's no evidence that it did anything at all. And the government's certainly not volunteering to hand it back, which is why you don't cede this stuff away without a fucking fight.
Those who will sacrifice liberty for security will in the end enjoy neither liberty or security.
Yeah, I think that's a Ben Franklin quote, and it's a great one. And so So one of the big arguments that's used is, well, we need it to track down terrorists. You know, we've got a terrorist on the hook, and if only we could get access to his mobile phone data and all his iCloud stuff, then we could nail him. Well, let's examine that theory. If we take the terror attacks that were committed in the last 12 to 24 months, the overwhelming majority of people that committed the terrorist attacks were already fucking known to the authorities.
And by the way, they didn't use their fucking iMessage account to send their dastardly plans to their partners in far-flung corners of the world. They used the dark web. They used the onion router. They used sources that aren't available to governments or Apple or anybody.
In society adapt.
Yeah.
So if iCloud's no longer the place they do business, they move to other services they do. They route their communications through Signal. They go to the onion router. They go to the dark web and use Tor services. You don't solve shit. But what it does cost is 67 million people another little bit of their fucking liberty. And it is wrong every day of the week and twice on a Sunday. You want the receipts for the terrorist stuff? France, the Mulhouse knife attack, February 22nd, 2025. A 37-year-old Algerian man fatally stabbed a civilian and seriously injured 2 police officers during a demonstration. The suspect was on a terrorism watch list and facing deportation orders for prior extremist links. The Munich shooting, September the 5th, 2024. An Austrian man fired shots at the Israeli consulate and other sites before being killed by police. And he'd been radicalised and was previously known to authorities for Islamist sympathies. And on it fucking goes. We can't stop the terrorists when we know who they fucking are and what they're planning. So the idea that if we had access to their fucking iCloud account would make any difference is ridiculous.
Stephen, fuck you before you even start.
Okay, we're going to
Right,
watch.
sorry. Right,
Okay.
let's calm
Calm this one down.
Calm
because,
down.
again, and I'm going to talk about this later on tonight, you're talking about the things that we couldn't stop. So first of all, we don't know what's been stopped. You already said, actually, in real life, this doesn't make that much of a difference. Who's being disadvantaged by it? Probably not us to any massive extent. Most of us have got nothing to hide. I'm also comfortable that I live in a country where we have a strong judiciary. We've got a court system that's there to protect us. So let's wind it back for a second and say you've got encrypted data and you've got a key which no one else has got access to. And the courts come along and say, give us your key. No. What's going to happen? They'll put you in prison. So ultimately, there are powers there. Also, the government looks at your data and abuses your data, abuses that privilege.
Yes.
That's what the courts are there for. The courts are there to ensure that what the government is doing is appropriate and within its laws. It can't overturn laws, but it can make sure it can hold it accountable to its laws. So ultimately we have to place trust in some form of institutions. Otherwise, we are basically living in a libertarian society. Every man, buy your gun, buy your beans, nestle down. And I think I would still rather trust that the government, who I can vote out, has some intention to try to look after us. I have absolutely no doubt that there is a lot of stuff that goes on in the world that we don't hear about. And the whole point of it is, actually, I think the problem is that the government's had to advertise this. They've had to actually announce it, because had they not announced it, it would have been effective. And I think that's what you're arguing about. It's not an effective way to stop the terrorists. If the terrorists believed that they could use these systems to keep private, they'd use them. Democracy says we have to actually tell people what we're doing. It makes it harder. But I don't see why it is such a problem. You've said it yourself. You're just going to move your system. Terrorists move their system. There's a degree of inconvenience. But for the vast majority of us, I still have no belief that the government want to see some stupid ranty email that I sent to a friend or relative.
No, but you have more faith in the judiciary than me, Stephen. I mean, the judiciary's been politicised. We live in a country where your door has and can be kicked in by misgendering somebody on Facebook. And I have the receipts for that as well. You live in a country where your door can be kicked in and has been kicked in at 6 o'clock in the morning and dragged away in a police van in front of your kids because you said something mean to somebody
Nasty
that objected
on the
it on
internet.
Facebook.
We've all
I don't
experienced-
trust the fucking government in a country where that's true.
We have all so one of the things about a democracy is things happen, reactions, legislation, change. So also be clear on the difference of the judiciary, which is our court system, which compared to America is incredibly independent and non-politicized. And the police who are following government orders. We ourselves have a friend who was dragged away to the police station overnight because he called his wife a bad name.
Yes.
That was nothing to do with this. That was a misuse of a piece of legislation that had been brought in, or not even a piece of legislation, a directive that had been brought in because some poor person, I think, had died having been dropped off by police somewhere. So it was all to do with violence against partners in a matrimonial dispute. So the difficulty that we always have, and I'm going to come on to this later on, is we've got things that are nuanced. And what would I rather have? I'd rather have the cards stacked up against the bad guys and take a bit of pain than have the cards way too easily abused by the bad guys. And my pain will be when they rob me, rape me, or kill me. And that I think is the worry that we have with all the things going on in the world at the moment.
They might rob you, mate, but they're definitely not going to rape you.
I would say you don't fully understand all the pain that you're already subject to. So I've brought up on the screen here the Investigatory Powers Act. So this is what they already have without any expansion. Targeted interception of communications, bulk collection of communication data, bulk interception of communications, acquisition of internet connection records for up to 1 year, equipment interference, including hacking into computers or devices, and bulk acquisition of personal data. Like, my objection to that is, guys, you don't feel like you've got it covered with that.
Yeah.
You need even more. So where
power.
does it end? And so where I'll finish my rant, because we've got a lot to get through in the docket, we're already half an hour in, and I wish I could rant for the rest of the episode on this. But where I'm going to finish my rant is two things. Number one, London is the most surveilled, one of the most surveilled cities in the world. Thousands of cameras everywhere monitoring every single part of the city, above ground and below ground, every face tracked, every movement recorded and monitors. Call centres full of people watching and monitoring this activity.
And yet,
crime is spiralling out of control in London. Completely spiraling out of control.
You're raising again. You're doing what politicians have a tendency to do. The crime that is spiraling out of control tends to be low level. It tends to be opportunism. It tends to be thefts. It tends to be violence. It tends to be lone individuals.
So we know you're okay with the crimes. What crimes do you not like?
no,
Stephen?
but it's organised theft and organised violence. There's teams of moped operatives driving about London, kicking people's
Here's my overarching point. Crime is exploding in London. Here's the receipts for it. Violent and sexual offences up 23%. Theft and robbery up 18% and 21% respectively. Shoplifting up 41%. This despite a unbelievable amount of
surveilled piece
stuff
of
that's
vector
designed
space.
to provide security and safety to you.
2 points to that. One, you can't give any stats for what it would be if that wasn't in place. And secondly, these crimes are not being caused largely as a result of tech and AI. These crimes are being caused by individuals who are acting out with generally the technology system. So I think there are other solutions there. Increased police presence, policemen on the street, more
Some of
powers.
it's cultural and societal as well. It's what's happening in the home.
And also people are not being sent to prison. The problem is, and you see it in America at the moment, that they were not prosecuting people for shoplifting, and therefore people just shoplifted. So I don't think you can necessarily have a rant about this piece of legislation and then connect it with levels of crime in London, because they're not necessarily the same thing.
The connection is the idea that we need all this stuff to make you safe and secure. That's the connection I'm making. It's always presented to you that we need it to make you safe and secure. And I'm saying that the world is becoming less safe and secure, and I'm providing local examples for that, despite the fact that we give more and more of our liberty away.
Yeah,
That's my problem.
Yeah,
with the
and
whole
I
thing.
think we beat that to death. But just to finish off, it just feels like the imposition of another broad-based rule to deal with the exception instead of the rule, right?
Again, I think it's been an interesting discussion. I think we're going to end up agreeing to disagree, because I don't disagree with you on, I'm not sure what the purpose of it is, but I'm not sure if this is the reason why we have so many problems. I think there's way better ways to address the issues that we have as a country, and it's not by taking a backdoor out of Apple.
I only keep harping on with paedophilia and terrorism because that's what Ben Wallace, the former Home Secretary, kept harping on. One of his tweets was, do you know who else loves encryption? Paedophiles.
Yeah.
And it was an absurd fucking tweet. So I want to finish off with 3 or 4 analogies, right? And full disclosure, I had AI help me make them, because I always think it's best to try and, when you're talking to an audience like this that might not be super, up to speed on encryption and ADP, how can you break it down into analogies? So imagine giving your house key to a neighbour you trust because they say they'll only use it to check for leaks. Then one day they're rifling through your drawers, reading your diary and inviting strangers in because they decided it's for your own good. That's what a backdoor is. It's a promise of restraint that history shows governments never keep. Look at China's social credit system or the NSA's PRISM program. Tools built initially for security that quickly morphed into mechanisms for surveillance and control. Analogy number 2. It's like the government demanding every house in the country install a flimsy lock that they can pick any time. Sure, they might catch a burglar, but now every home is vulnerable to anyone who finds the master key, be it hackers, rogue cops, or foreign spies. You wouldn't live in that neighborhood. Why build a digital world just like it? And then the last analogy that I will end on is like banning bulletproof vests to stop bank robbers. The robbers will just buy theirs on the black market while law-abiding folks get caught in this crossfire. The backdoor punishes the innocent more than it catches the guilty.
I'm going to leave you with one thought,
Yeah.
which is I may disagree with you, but I love a good analogy.
Yes.
Well, there you go.
All right.
A
Peace
rare
is broken
moment of
out
consensus.
on the Round Table Rethink podcast. All right. Somebody else take the mantle here and let my blood pressure come down.
Okay, so last week's episode that we told you that instead of just talking about AI and business and tech in broad terms, we wanted to get more practical. So what we're going to try and do moving forward to the best of our ability is regularly introduce new segments into the show on the real world applications of AI and the entrepreneurial approach. And I decided that to start this off, we're going to start with the subject of job seeking. Why? Because this is something that everybody can relate to. So at some point, we've all had to apply for jobs. Parents, your kids might be looking for a job right now. You might be looking for a job. You might be in a job but want a better job, right? So let's talk about job hunting. So what we're essentially arguing here is that the traditional job search process is broken, right?
Sure it is.
Mm-hmm.
If you've ever spent hours applying for jobs, only to hear nothing back, you already know this to be true. It's outdated, it's slow, and worst of all, it puts you in this kind of horrible, disempowered state of just sitting, waiting, hoping, whilst you compete with hundreds of other applicants for the position. And you have to remember, of course, as well, that companies are flooded. For every job role that they put up, they've got hundreds, sometimes thousands of applications. And so if you're doing what everybody else is doing, you're essentially invisible, just another name in a massive list of names. So what we've done is we've developed a brand new AI-powered entrepreneurial approach to the job-seeking process, which we call the Employment Hackers Methodology. And we're going to explain what that is today and show you how to wield it as a competitive weapon in the job-seeking market. Now, Paddy, before I get into what the steps are, do you want to just give them the 60-second potted history in employment hackers? Because this isn't a new thing. We've just kind of dug it up from 2016.
Well, Employment Hackers comes out of a walk that we had through Silverburn Shopping Centre probably 7 years ago, and we were lamenting how
9 years ago.
9 years ago, and we were lamenting how weird it is. There's like this strange disconnect between people who are seeking employment and people who are looking for employees. And so having sat on both sides of the table, when I'm looking for employees, it finds like almost no good employees exist. And yet when people are seeking employment, it finds like there's almost no employees or employers engaging or listening. So there's this very strange disconnect. And there's plenty of both on either side. And so what we were trying to do, and I think it was largely based on the fact that our kids were struggling at that time.
With family members that were trying to find a job.
Family members who were struggling to find work. And we were like, gosh, like how could we, there's got to be a better way than just literally sending, pray and spray with the CVs. 99 times out of 100, they're not even responded to or acknowledged. And you can understand how like despondent that must be for people.
And by the way, we created a really shitty WordPress site for it.
We did, it's still
which
there,
you dug out the URL for me the other day, and I went back. And you know what? I read through the content on there, and it is absolutely bomb-proof gold. It's as relevant today as it was when we wrote it back in 2016. But what we're going to do is bring it up to date to 2025 and sprinkle on top the kind of AI enablement tools that can help you all the way through the process to really supercharge. Because, well, let me just go through a few of the steps first. So step one in the employment hackers method is getting into the right mindset, right? So before you contact anyone, send a single application, you need to get your head right. Step two is how to target and research the right companies so that you're choosing where you want to work and not just taking whatever you can get. Step three is how to identify and contact key decision makers in the company, and more importantly, what to send them. Step four is how to follow up like a pro without pissing people off. And step five is how to prep for an interview so well that you ace it first time, every time. All the time.
One time, all the time, every time.
So we're not really talking here just about a kind of slightly better way to apply for jobs. It's a completely different way of thinking about the job seeking process. But when I was talking to you earlier today on the phone about this, Paddy, you actually said something interesting. You said, I think we need to address...
It was bound to happen sooner or later.
You said, I think we need to address the elephant in the room. Yeah. And so do you want to talk about what the elephant in the room is?
Is it me? Is it me?
The elephant in the room is leave self-pity at the door.
Yeah.
That is a huge part of getting in the right headspace for this. Just don't feel sorry for yourself. Self-pity is a pretty useless emotion. And by the time you've indulged in it, all your problems still exist when you're done with it. So just bypass self-pity.
But who does this program not help?
If you have a bad attitude and you have no skills to trade, there's nothing we can tell you that's going to...
So if you have a bad attitude and you have some tradable skills, this can work for you. If you have some tradable skills, if you have a good attitude but you're not overly skilled, it can still work for you. It definitely can't work for you if you have both a bad attitude
for sure,
and not a lot of skills to trade.
So just don't indulge in self-pity, right? You are where you are. We're all where we're supposed to be. Just go forward and in a better mindset, be positive and take action. Massive action is what's required here.
And that's why you were so insistent that when I was coming up with this content here, that we separated out mindset into its own individual
100%.
module.
You almost can't progress past that.
Yeah.
If you're not in the right mindset, you're not going to do the rest of it, so it's pointless even talking about it. Yeah. You've got to start with the right mindset.
But the reality, we've all been through these kind of schools, but action solves most
100%.
problems. So whatever you're going to do something.
By the way, as general life advice, not as job seeking advice.
Exactly.
Like anything you're stressed out about it, just go and do something about it tomorrow morning. You will feel much better having done something about it.
So you've got the right mindset, you're ready to do the work, you're showing up with a positive attitude, you're accepting the situation that you're in. Now there's one assumption that we've made here, which is you've got some kind of CV, right? To make this listenable for people, I thought that breaking down the anatomy of a CV, by role and the structure by role and by industry type was just going to be too boring for people. So what I've done instead is I've created a PDF document that will be downloadable in the show notes at the end of this. And I've created my own proprietary structure for a CV that if you just work with something like ChatGPT as a co-pilot to fill in your own personal, traits and skills and stuff like that. It's a kind of fill in the blanks job. And if you do that, you'll come straight out of the gate with something that's differentiated, memorable, and impactful. So let's just assume that that's true.
Because let's be real, most people's CVs absolutely suck.
Suck shit.
They're lazy and they're usually full of the same bullshit platitudes that nobody's interested in.
And the reality of it is most employers are only looking at one or two key things. What makes you stand out? What is your differentiator?
I work well individually or in a team.
I may have to update mine then.
So step 2 in this is company targeting and research. So where do you actually find companies that you want to work for? Well, there are 2 key approaches, and each one has its pros and its cons. So approach number 1 is you find them where everybody else finds them, which is LinkedIn and Indeed and these other kind of job websites. Now, the pros of that is that you're applying where companies are actively hiring, but it also means that which means there is already demand for new employees. But the con is that because they're openly recruiting, you're competing against a large pool of applicants, making it much harder to stand out. So approach 2 is the kind of proactive approach that we actually prefer, which is instead of chasing open listings, take control of the process. Make a short list of 10 companies that you admire and would like to work for. Now, you can get these for anywhere. These can be companies in your local area. They can be businesses that you just have, if you've seen online or you've got a LinkedIn connection with that you've just always admired and thought, wow, it looks great to work there. Remember when we were growing up, in Castle Park, we were like, see if you could just get a job in Beecham, see if you could just get a job in Roches,
Beecham's was like that was the money
grail.
ticket, yeah. God, if you could get into SmithKline Beecham.
So they
had holidays and everything.
And drugs.
So you create a short list of 10 companies, right? And what we actually prefer is that you focus on companies that aren't actively hiring right now. So why? Well, because of that, these roles aren't flooded with competition.
Correct.
And as we all know as entrepreneurs, a lot of companies hire opportunistically when the right candidate presents themselves.
Correct.
They create a position.
Yep.
And I've got anecdotal, information in my own company, Holly getting in touch out the blue. And
by the way, just for a credibility perspective, between us, we've probably hired in excess of 100 people. So
way in excess of that, closer to 200.
Yeah, I know what the hiring process looks like. And by the way, I really don't enjoy the hiring process. I actually find it to be a miserable, nightmarish type activity. I never enjoyed hiring people. I always found it to be a total pain in the ass that I never really felt I had the time for.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, keep going.
So now that you've got your target list, a set of companies, this is the companies that you'll focus your outreach strategy on, and this will give you a much better chance of landing a role that's actually right for you. So what we need to do next is research like a private investigator. Okay. So now that you have your target list, we need to go a wee bit deeper. So what we're not going to do is send out cold messages. We're going to gather intelligence on these companies like a private investigator to make sure that when we do reach out, we stand out. So the next process is finding key contacts. Who do you reach out to in these companies? So the goal here is really simple, right? Find the decision makers, the people who actually have the power to hire you. And this is something that we've always done, Paddy. See, when I was looking for jobs, I would always try and find the owner of the company first, right? So you start at the top of the food chain. If possible, go straight to the owner or CEO. If they're not contactable or that's not an option, just work your way down the hierarchy of the company, directors, senior managers, department heads.
2 things come to mind when you say all of that. One, be creative. Once you find people on an email list, often there will be a system by which they are named. So if you know that the secretary is such and such at, the chances are the chief exec will be.
Yeah.
So try it. Secondly, and I think the thing that's resonating with me here is when I do law stuff, I teach law students, we talk about transferable skills. And what's fascinating to listen to today, Andy, is everything that you're talking about is a transferable skill. You've just created not just a fabulous CV, you're creating people who know how to sell, how to market. If you can sell yourself, you can sell anything. So the people listening, this is not just about a great CV. This is you adding a skill set which has got a value.
Yeah, 100%.
So circling back to where do you find these people, right? Well, the short answer is you find them on LinkedIn, right? So regular folks spend their free time on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Business owners spend their spare time on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So go to LinkedIn, go to the search bar, type in the company name and filter by people. Now you'll see a list of employees with many of them having a message next to their name, including the CEOs. So boom, you now have a direct link to key decision makers. But you don't want to rush in yet and message them because you only get one chance to make a first impression.
One shot, do not judge your chance to blow. This opportunity comes once in a lifetime. Yo.
Oh, I love a bit of M&M.
So before you hit send on any message, we need to dig a wee bit deeper and research the company so that eventually when you do reach out, your message is impossible to ignore. So my go-to platform for company research is Perplexity AI. By the way, any AI tools that I mention in here are going to be free AI tools because the one thing that job seekers all have in common is they tend to be short on cash. So there's no point in dropping in a bunch of kind of paid AI tools. Yeah. Paddy, you're a power user of Perplexity. Do you want to just take 30 seconds to explain as to why it's a uniquely excellent tool for company research?
It's like Google on steroids. So it basically does a bunch of web searches, scrapes websites ahead of time for you, and then reasons across all that information that it scraped and brings you back the answer rather than some blue links to go and look at. And so that's what makes Perplexity special.
And it gives you the
very generous free tier. And so we'll link Perplexity in the show notes. We'll put a link in there for anybody who's interested. But I'm a power user, use it 50 times a day, couldn't live without it. Definitely one of the tools I would not want to give up lightly.
And so just so I can't be accused of being thorough, what I developed here as part of these notes was an example prompt that I used, and I used Evolution Software, your old company, as the example, and you as the person that I was trying to contact. And so the sample prompt that I created was, you're a business intelligence analyst specializing in company research. Your task is to provide a detailed breakdown of Evolution Software, a B2B e-commerce company in the office products, industrial and janitorial markets. I need insights to craft a compelling LinkedIn message to the owner, Patrick Donnelly. Gather and summarize key information, including company overview, market position and competitors, recent news and milestones, challenges and opportunities, leadership and culture, and hiring trends and growth. And guess what? It spat out a gigantic fucking dossier of screeds and screeds and screeds and screeds of contextual information about both you and Evolution Software, which is great. That's exactly what we're looking for. So,
and we'll capture that prompt as well in the show notes as well, so that people can
I'm
paste it in.
essentially going to make this presentation as almost like a mini free course that I'm going to make available in the show notes after this, so that you can basically DM somebody a link to it, that's job seeking at the moment.
Yeah.
So we're moving on to step number 3, which is now time to reach out and make sure that Uncle Paddy pays attention when you do. So now that we've locked in Evolution Software as our target company and identified Uncle Paddy as our key contact, it's time to craft a message that doesn't get ignored. So what you definitely don't want to do at this point, guys, is don't send a boring cookie cutter message. We're going to be bold, we're going to be creative, and we're going to get personal. So step 1 to do this is we're going to use ChatGPT to craft a killer outreach message. So to maximize the impact, we're going to feed ChatGPT the right information so that it can generate a highly personalized, attention-grabbing message. And here's how we're going to do it. We're going to upload two documents into ChatGPT. Doc 1 is going to be your CV, and this is going to tell the AI who you are and what you bring to the table. And doc number 2 is going to be your company research dossier. And this is going to provide insights on Evolution Software, their goals and their challenges. Now, armed with all this information, we're going to ask ChatGPT to craft a compelling LinkedIn message that ties your skills to what Evolution Software actually needs. And this will give you the best shot at starting a real conversation with Paddy. And once again, I created a sample prompt for this. So the prompt is, you're an expert in sales and persuasive communication. Your task is to craft a compelling, highly personalized LinkedIn message to Patrick Donnelly, the owner of Evolution Software. I've uploaded 2 documents. Document 1, my CV. Document 2, the company research document. Using this information, create a LinkedIn message that immediately grabs Paddy's attention. that clearly ties my skills and experience to Evolution Software's needs, feels natural and human, and is concise but impactful, making it easy for him to reply.
Boom.
So that prompt actually produced a really solid output.
And so the really cool thing about it is, even for the kids who struggle with English, even for the kids who struggle to write long form, this is a complete cheat code. It's a total get out of jail free card.
And by the way, see, for the purists out there who think this is wrong and that they shouldn't be doing that, don't assume that everybody has naturally got high levels of creativity and IQ, right? A lot of us don't, right? A lot of people actually will really, really value from having that co-pilot to help them craft this message.
Again, this is back to transferable skills. I keep saying to people, work the muscle,
Yeah.
use the systems, learn how to use them. It's like calculators, they're never disappearing. So learn how to use them. And again, even if you don't get a job, you have now got yourself another skill that's sellable to the next person.
Now, if you've got the skills for it, what we actually prefer in the employment hackers methodology is that you take the insights from ChatGPT and turn them into a concise, engaging video script that you can easily memorize. Then you want to record a 60 to 90 second video pitch on your phone and delivering your message, obviously, with like confidence and personality.
Video intros are the biggest hacking job seeking.
100%.
If somebody presented me with a 5-page CV or a 3-minute video, I'd just watch the 3-minute video.
Yeah.
And this is an augmented example from what you actually wrote on the old Employment Hackers website from 2016, but I've brought it up to date. So an example message that you could send would be, "Hey, Paddy, we've never met, but I wanted to reach out because I'm really interested in what you're building at Evolution Software. I know you're not actively hiring right now, but I believe that great opportunities don't always come from job postings, they come from conversations. Rather than sending a generic CV, I put together this short video to introduce myself. It's only 90 seconds, but it'll give you a better sense of who I am and what I bring to the table and how I could add value to Evolution Software. Here's a YouTube link. If nothing else, I'd love to connect and hear your thoughts. Let me know if you'd be up for a quick chat." So, I mean, I think if you got that message in your DM account, and you clicked on a YouTube link and there was a really smart young kid there, presented well and talking about all the things that he could do for your business.
And by the way, as a business owner who's hired a lot of people, I am a sucker for that type of message. Like, that just sings to me because it shows initiative, it shows get up and go, it shows all of the things.
People forget.
I would find it irresistible to pick up the phone.
People forget the 5 most important words in the English language. Please, can you help me?
Yeah.
Please, can you help me?
100%.
Because you're right, that message does 3 things. It makes you stand out instantly, it shows personality and confidence, and it makes it easy for Paddy to say yes. So, you've put in the work, you've tracked down Uncle Paddy, you've researched Evolution Software inside and out, you've crafted a killer video script, delivered it with confidence, and sent him a message so good that it deserves a fucking award. And guess what happens? Paddy replies instantly, raves about how amazing your effort's been, and offers you a job on the spot. Wrong. Because that's not how the real world works, is it? So the reality is that despite your best efforts, the chances are, well, there's a good chance that you won't get an immediate response at all. And this is where most people go wrong. They assume that silence means rejection.
Yeah, exactly.
And it doesn't. So now the question is, what do you do next? And that brings us on to number 4, which is mastering the art of follow-up. So you've sent your outreach message and radio silence. Sucks to be you, right? No problem. This is where most people give up, but not you, because the employment hackers follow-up methodology is built on 2 key principles. Principle number 1.
Follow up till they buy, or follow up till they die.
Well, that's the overarching principle, but within that principle, you have 2 tenets here, which is number 1, vary the delivery type, right? Not everybody responds the same way. Some people that, will reply to an email will ignore a phone call. Some people that will ghost a LinkedIn DM will actually respond to a WhatsApp message or a Facebook Messenger DM. And the key is to map out
Snail mail's a great hack as well.
Don't even steal my thunder because I'm coming to it, right? The key is to map out every possible way to reach that person and start cycling through the different channels till you find the one that they're prepared to respond to you on. So again, email, LinkedIn DM, phone call or text message, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, DM, and the big hack This is an absolute power move. A handwritten letter, snail mail.
I have to say a call out to Uncle Alan, little Uncle Alan, who has built a marketing business on the art of the handwritten letter.
Really?
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Because ultimately it's
Nobody does
so
it.
unusual nowadays
differentiating.
to actually write a handwritten letter.
100%.
And it makes impact.
The problem is mine would be indecipherable because I write in these
Just get Emma to write it.
almost these Egyptian hieroglyphics.
Dear ChatGPT, please write this in a handwriting script that looks a bit like mine.
Undoubtedly.
So we're nearly there. So the second tenet of the follow-up system for employment hackers is vary the messaging and always lead with value. So the biggest mistake that people make when they're following up is they send the same message over and over again. Every time you reach out, you should be saying something new, you should be adding value, and you should be looping back to the objective, which is to get a response from Uncle Paddy. So here are 2 follow-up examples at work. I absolutely love this first one, the no-risk trial work offer. Paddy, I know you've got a lot on your plate, so let's make this simple. Bring me in for 2 days at no cost, no commitment, and if I don't impress you, no harm, no foul. Let me know what you think.
Yeah.
And I love that because what's the one thing that unemployed people have on their hands? Time. Don't be scared to trade a wee bit of your time to snare a fantastic opportunity. This whole concept of try before you buy, again, is pretty irresistible to business owners, right? So you're not hiring them, you're bringing them.
I think most business owners will not abuse that either.
No.
They'll not just get you in for 2-3 days labour. You know, they'll get you in if they're seriously interested in taking you on as employee. I think people go, oh yeah, but they'll just abuse me for free labour. It's like, nobody really does that.
Yeah.
So say, for example, that you emailed that message to Paddy 4 days after your initial outreach and that gets ignored again. So you just go back to the tenant. So your second follow-up might be a text message or it might be a Facebook DM saying, Paddy, I was really impressed with how Susan handled my inquiry when I called in the other day. She was knowledgeable, professional, and super friendly. Exactly the kind of team I'd love to be a part of. I also have some ideas on how I could add even more value to the team. Are you free for a chat sometime? So that's the positive mystery shop approach. And you could go on and on and on with examples. But the idea is you're cycling through the contact
Paddy,
methods.
I mystery shopped your sales team. Here's 3 insights I got from that call, and I've done a recording of that, and here's a link to the YouTube. I hope that really helps you.
I think the other thing that you need to just, again, understand, for everyone looking for a job, you need to build up a bit of a tough skin. What people don't like is rejection.
Yeah.
So, and what you have to do is reframe in your own head what's going on. So silence is not rejection. Silence, you have to look at it positively. You have to look at it and say, wow, it's another opportunity.
Yeah.
And the second thing, which I'm sure you're going to come on to, so I'll steal your thunder, is because you've done all the work, you realise it's a game worth playing. It's a game worth playing. You're not doing this for some silly job that you're going to be there for 2 weeks and not enjoy. You're doing this because you've chosen something. You want to be there. You see. So it's worth putting the effort in to get the prize.
And that goes right back to the beginning of the process, which is why you've got to get your mind right before you start, because you've got to tell yourself, I might need to do this 100 times before I get a response. Whereas a lot of people get into it and went, this doesn't work. I tried it 3 times and nobody's got back to me. I'm bailing on it.
It's having the right expectation at the level of activity that's required to get a result.
Yeah.
So you followed up 5, 6, 7, 17 times in loads of different ways. You finally beaten Uncle Paddy into submission. He's giving you an interview for next Friday. Now what? It takes us on to the final step of the employment hackers. The final match of the employment hackers system. And that is interview prep. And what I've put down here is train hard, fight easy. So you don't just want to show up for an interview hoping for the best, right? You want to show up looking like you've already won the job. And the best way to do that is train harder than the real thing. So what we're going to do now is we're going to digitally create a brutal interviewer who throws curveballs at you, challenges your expertise, and forces you to think on your feet. And we're going to use ChatGPT to do this. And so once again, I created another prompt, which got me a fantastic output. I said, you're the head of HR at Evolution Software, uploaded the data sheet for Evolution. You're interviewing me next Friday for a sales position. Challenge me with tough, direct questions that test my knowledge, experience, and ability to sell myself for this role. And guess what? It came back with a lot of curveballs and a lot of hardballs. And the idea here is that you drill the hardest, most uncomfortable questions until nothing catches you off guard. Remember, this thing's got domain experience on the industry that he's in. It's got company experience. It knows a ton of stuff about his business.
Because you uploaded the data sheet.
Because you uploaded the data sheet. And the result is, by the time you're in the real interview, you'll be sharp, you'll be confident, you'll be unshakable.
Love it.
So there is the Employment Hackers AI-enabled entrepreneurial approach to snaring a job in 60 seconds or less.
I don't know about you guys. I thought that was pure, solid gold.
Yeah.
And
I have to say,
incredible resource for anybody engaged in the job-seeking process.
if that doesn't end up on college, university, and employment websites over the next few weeks, I will eat my bikini.
Your bikini. So that's our gift to you. Following on from last week, it's promises made, promises kept, and go through the process. I pretty much guarantee you'll get a job in 60 days or less. If you don't, make sure you ask for a refund. Oh, wait, it's fucking free.
No, I think, and of course, anybody's listening. If there's anybody in your circle or in your network that's job seeking right now, please share this episode, share it widely, because we do love the idea of somebody getting some real value out of that.
And that wee presentation that I made there, I'm actually going to do a slightly expanded version, actually turn it into a course, like a wee mini free course that they can download in a PDF from the show notes.
Great. And we'd also love to hear if people get a job based on that.
Yeah,
fabulous, get some positive
100%.
feedback.
That would be super exciting.
So, shall I?
Stephen, bring us home.
All right. So I thought this week I would look at the negative side of technology. We're all very positive, so nothing I'm saying it's a bit like my
Did you hear Paddy's segment on
politics.
That was the negative side of government.
That was negative of government. And I think that we are all very pro-technology, pro-change, but I think there are warnings that require to be had. And I always like, when I speak to students, to ask them, do they know who Alfred Nobel is? And of course we do. He's the inventor of, amongst other things, nitroglycerin, TNT. And although he sponsored the Peace Prize, the Nobel Peace Prize, which is still given away every year, he invented something which had the potential for fabulous good and fabulous evil. So what we know is guns don't kill people, people kill people, people shoot. And AI and technology is giving us a plethora of benefits, but a plethora of curses that come with it.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about those today. One of the things we've all been very interested in talking about is obviously Doge and how much that department could potentially save the US government from by way of costs. Does anyone want to guess what the current loss to the US government is from cyber crimes, online crimes?
Somewhere between tens and hundreds of billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Between 233 and 521 billion annually.
God damn.
So we're already beginning to see. So my own personal experience recently is just in the legal world. We're starting to see an increase in really high level phishing type emails.
Yeah.
So they're coming through, and the days of, hi, you've won the Nigerian lottery are long gone.
Yeah.
Pidgin English, bad
No,
numbers.
the level of sophistication is incredible now. They can actually drop a text message into your Santander bank thread from the bank.
Yeah.
And this kind of spoofing kind of technique that they do. So you're right that the level of sophistication is insane.
And that's without the prevalence of AI. Wait till you see where that goes in the next 12 to 24 months.
And I don't know if you saw the update from Santander today, which was a warning on your app about your FTPs, the password that they send.
Passcodes.
And now telling you to be really careful because effectively people are intercepting those. So basically, while AI gives us incredible benefits, we've got AI cyber crimes, automated attacks, things that just do it without thinking about it. The whole stuff that you talked about there, Andy, fabulous about how it can be used to power job applications. It can be used to power all kinds of nefarious acts. We've got deep fakes. You know, we've talked again about using Grok to make pictures photorealistic. Works for the negative as well. And we're all fairly sophisticated users. Imagine what that's like for our parents and our grandparents
100%.
who are struggling.
Yeah, totally agree.
Total loss, I think, to the world economy was something like 10.5 trillion pounds
With a
in
T.
cyber crimes.
Wow.
The one that jumped out at me last week was one in, I think it was Dubai. There was a company who were...
Is it BitPay or a bit something?
BitBite. Thank you, BitBite. 1.4 billion. Was it 14 billion? It was a big number.
So it was an exchange that got hacked or something like that?
It was. I don't think it was. It's a crypto exchange. I think it was Ethereum they got.
Right.
But again, it was a tech attack. Managed it in the way of data passing. Took out the coins, and of course you think, well, it's technology, so we can track all that down.
Yeah.
But it's so difficult. The addresses are all obfuscated.
Yeah.
They're all immediately then spread out to multiple accounts, laundered, rolled, impossible to find. They've got about 10 to 40 million of it back so far.
And drop in the ocean.
A drop in the ocean. They've put up, I think, a 10% reward for any information. So if you know where to get it, you're still in for a good few million. But the reality of it is we have major problems, and it's the negative side. So again, I'm not going to revisit the whole data protection thing, but just to be aware.
Google, Sundar Pichai at the AI safety conference the other week that I discussed, the one that JD Vance spoke at, Sundar Pichai was up before him, and he spent pretty much his whole speech talking about AI watermarking. So they're in the early phases of being able to come up with the equivalent of an AI watermark that they could apply to any piece of content to figure out if it had been AI generated. So I do think, totally accept everything you're saying. It's, I mean, the next election cycle in 4 years, my God, that should be fun when AI is just ubiquitous and everywhere. How will you know what's real? How will you know what's
when
fake?
photorealistic Starmer can adjust his messaging to every single person that watches his video on the fly.
This stuff has gone on forever. I mean, one of my great loves was cycling, and you would see the doping cheats and then the medical stuff. Mm-hmm. So the doping cheats got smarter, and then eventually the medical examiners got smarter. It's been a war. We've got the same war going on.
But that war's always been going on, I suppose,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah. So all I'm saying is that the difficulty is with the speed at which we're seeing things increase. We are jumping forward without necessarily always thinking about the safety rails. The other one was obviously copyright. So I see that the Clearview AI CEO resigned this week. He said something like £100 million in GDPR fines. So data breaches. So again, we've yet to understand or come to terms with what data belongs to whom. And while we all think, there's stuff out there in the web, I still think there's a value in people's creativity, and we need to find a way to protect it.
Yeah.
I think that's why fundamentally frontier models will only ever be built by 3 or 4 companies in the future, because they'll be the only companies who can afford to fight the lawsuits as well as scale up the infrastructure. I totally agree with all this thread, which is why it's almost like we need end-to-end encryption to have the most secure technology that we can possibly have.
Where's the Emperor? Where is it? Unlimited power. Where's the clip that you showed me earlier?
Other things I'd again be interested just to get your views, but I did ask Perplexity today about what its inbuilt biases were, what the issues were, the inbuilt biases. So take Grok, for example. It's going to get the largest majority, I would assume, of its data from X. Yeah. And again, no disrespect.
No.
It will get a large.
It's augmenting.
It will get a large amount of data from X.
It's scraping the entire all public information available on the internet,
including
X. But it's one of its
which
unique
will be X,
features. And unfortunately, we all realise that X, in some of its formats, is a bit of a cesspool, bigoted, racist, whatever else. Now, on one side of the coin, we've seen how Gemini, I think, tried to build in biases which were very DEI. We ended up with Black George Washington and female Jesus. And that's neither right nor wrong. That's just one of it. On the other side, when you've got data which is bigoted or which is prejudiced, that will come through. So we have inbuilt biases. We've got selection bias, reporting bias. You can obviously, we've seen it for our own kids in social media. The algorithms are there to create interaction. So basically, Facebook, all of these things are there designed to get interaction with the system. And it doesn't really care how it gets interaction. So it can't work out what good interaction or bad interaction. If showing you pictures of people being murdered gets more likes, then you're going to see more pictures of that.
That's why I think you need minimal bias in all AI, and that is the mission of Grok. It's called Grok because it's maximally truth-seeking and maximally curious. And it's trying to eliminate the bias. And by eliminating the bias, you do get fat-smoking Taylor Swift.
You're going to be more based, but we need at least one of them.
But reality is fucked up, and it's weird, and so we can't come up with a guard-railed version of reality. It's got to represent reality. And reality is messy, and reality is a bit fucked up.
I think that there's two sides to that coin, because if that was the truth, we would all be saying, oh, well, our children are what they deserve to be from watching too much Facebook. There's got to be an aspirational side. There's got to be a better version of humanity. And one of the difficulties that we have is we have to be really careful. The bit that I thought was really funny was I was watching a video about AI's cheating. So Palisade have a chess playing AI. But what they realize is they're teaching it to win, but it wins at any cost. It wins by cheating when it can. I think we've all seen examples of that over
Disappears
time.
Pieces off the board, sinks them through, brings them back up in other places and stuff.
So again, and I'm not saying that these things won't be addressed. All I'm saying is that at the moment, you can't just say that all of AI is good. We need to be doing more by way of input. The human input. It's one of the reasons why I don't fundamentally disagree with what Facebook did by removing its panel. Its panel of fact checkers, because without them, there's a lack of morality in insight. So I think there's a lot of interesting things coming around. I think be careful for what you wish and just ensure. We live in a world where too many politicians, too many people want to give us straight answers. It's yes, it's no, it's good, it's bad. And I think if we forget the nuances and the better vision, we could end up with something which is fundamentally problematic.
That's why I think community notes on X is such a fabulous feature, because the answer to misinformation is more information, right? It's not necessarily masking the information.
And it's why they don't just delete that tweet on X. They add community notes to
they
it
add
to
community.
provide additional
And am I right saying a community note cannot materialize unless two people that disagree on other things or something like that come together to agree on?
I don't know how the mechanics works underneath. I know that many people have to draw the same conclusion in order for the note to become real. And so it's a good... Listen, I don't think there's any perfect solutions to any of these problems. I think, like I said, reality is messy. Reality is a bit effed up. And it's going to be like that for a while longer. But I do have a lot of confidence that we will figure out these things as we go along.
I think we as long as we're not too gung-ho, I think, and we don't put too much faith in our supreme leaders or our heads of government.
Where were you an hour ago?
Well, but another kind of just my story to leave on was, of course, Javier Milei last week, who, if you remember, I talked about meme coins a few weeks ago and some of the risks with them. Perfect example. He decided to tweet about his coin.
It wasn't his. I think that was the thing, wasn't it?
Well, he tweeted about, and you're right, it wasn't about his coin, it was about a coin, but he tweeted and gave a link to it and said it was good for the economy and for everywhere else, and effectively price
Pump
went
and
through,
dump.
pump and dumps, it went through the roof, and then they pulled the rug on it and everyone lost their money. He took the tweet down. So he's either been hacked and a fool,
or a participant.
But either way, it shows the danger of an unregulated. So again, cryptocurrencies, proper regulation. Without it, people's money is at risk. So lots of good stuff coming down the line. But let's just take a moment occasionally to think about the bigger pictures and tortoise and hares.
Okie dokie.
And on that cautionary note, we'll probably wrap it up.
before we wrap up, you need to try and play us out with that Emperor. Did you not get the Emperor Palpatine? So while we were just sitting discussing what we were going to do, Paddy pulled up a clip of the show when we were talking about the Starmer thing. So we'll see if we can get it
to Keir Starmer proposing his new policy about backdoors in Apple.
Yes.
In order to ensure the security and continuing stability, the Republic will be reorganized into the first galactic empire.
And secure society.
Hey, I think that could be echoed across the world at the moment.
Woo! Another one in the books, boys.
Oh,
Episode 7.
Good to be back home.
Good to have you back, mate.
All right, Stephen, do what you do better than anybody else on the on the internet. Beg shamelessly and mercilessly for likes, shares, and subscribes.
Please. Oh, please. Please. You know what we need?
Likes and subscribe.
Like, subscribe. I think that's the big thing. Push the follow button. It means you're going to get the show when it drops every Monday. And it helps us with our numbers. And it's all about just getting into ratings. We're really delighted. Thank you to everyone who has been sending us lovely messages, who seem to be interested in hearing what we have to say. So thank you from the bottom of all of our hearts. And I think today is a fabulous one to share. There's some great news here, and we will try our very, very best to keep it coming.
It would almost be irresponsible not to share it with somebody in the job-seeking process. That was solid gold.
And in fact, for next week, I must ask ChatGPT to give me 5 different begging propositions.
We will definitely incorporate it.
All right, episode 7 in the can. We'll see you next Monday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, guys.